So the stretches are pretty much the same for the heart, because it's the same as for the lung, basically. And the small intestine is basically the same for the large intestine. But the difference is the location of the meridian. Okay? So because of our compressed time consideration and the many emotions, we have more emotions than we have time, which is probably true. We're going to try to consolidate, and the stretch is one thing, but I want you to make sure that you know where the meridian is and the source point, which is the deeper important factor. Okay, so I'm going to accelerate on the stretch and then emphasize the location of the meridian and the source point. Okay? All right. So for heart and small intestine, so remember, so we did this for the heart and small intestine, right? So the stretch then would be the same opening here for the heart. Now the heart starts in the arm, a lot like the lotus that grows in the mud. The heart comes out of the armpit, and it comes in between the bicep and tricep on the little finger side. So when working the heart, we start here and just go right in this groove, and then right up to the source point, which is where the lung meridian was here. The heart is on the other end of the wrist crease. So if you drew a line between your fourth and fifth finger straight down to underneath the wrist crease, you'll feel, and please do, feel free, to feel that indentation. That is for the heart meridian. Now just press in there a little bit and just close your eyes for a minute or two and just take a few breaths and try to make that connection between that point and your heart, because it's a really straight line. Okay. And again, remember that the pressure of the subo, which is called acupressure point, is not in but up underneath the bone. And if you're having any difficulty finding it on yourself or someone else, you want to displace by doing a little lateral flexion towards your thumb, and you should accelerate the sensation on the point. So one thing about the acupressure points, when we're thumbing the meridian and when doing the points, you should keep into consideration that it's an energetically more based work. So the pressure doesn't have to be so intensely driven, but more energetically aware, meaning there's some softness. Like we use palpation to go into it and feel the dull ache so you know where it is, but then you should back up a little bit and see how much pressure you actually have to use to elicit that same sensation. You'll find that you don't have to use that much. Right? It's not like trying to work out a trigger point, but it's trying to go into where it is and no further. So you're sort of interfacing with where it is. The nature of the subos, they're very shy. Subos. So if you bull rush them, you're not gonna make contact with them so much. So you want to go in, feel it, and then back up a little bit. Because then when you back up and just use the appropriate amount of pressure, like expressing yourself in an appropriate manner, things flow a little easier, and the person receiving will feel more. Okay? So that's the source point for the heart. And again, it's just this straight thing like this. Okay. And it ends on the inside of the little finger.
In the armpit? Where in the armpit? Just like...
Well, it's right in the middle of the axillary, so you just stick your finger in there. And then you close it down. Don't wait a minute, just stick it in there. Now, in acupuncture, they never do the first point. So acupressure, you can. But it's just sort of, they just don't do it that way. Maybe they think it's too direct. because there's attacked on the heart meridian is a natural fibrillator point. You know those fibrillators that bring your heart back into rhythm? There's a series of points, excuse me, in acupressure that are called acupressure first aid points. And the heart one is right where the heart meridian ends on the inside of the little nail, the little pinky fingernail. And if you bite down on that, baby, it will directly jump your heart a little bit and try to get it back into rhythm. So if you have the consciousness when somebody has heart failure,
To bite their
Stick
finger.
their
finger.
mark that finger.
People would be like, no!
When I took these courses years ago, we had toothpicks, and we would do it. Because he was a sadistic little Japanese dude. And he just had a box of toothpicks and he went, and everybody took it, and he just had us doing this, and it was excruciatingly painful. But this is, because if you bite down on enough, it like, goes right to the heart.
Wow.
So, if you remember to do that, I mean, you really have to have it together. If someone's having a heart attack, stick your pinky finger in your mouth and butt down.
So it doesn't matter how short or long your pinky. I'm just kidding.
No, that refers to something else.
Oh.
We're talking
It must be real. Sorry.
That's all right.
back to Donald Trump.
We were getting political. What happened?
A lot of stuff is happening. Okay, so, but again, so for the heart stretch here, you know, and what makes a difference is this, like, you know, you can change the angle of the arm and ask the person who's receiving it. So, like, you know, you can change the angle. If you go back like this, you feel it more here for long. You know, if it's back down a little bit, you feel it for pericardium, and then at heart, so you want to change the angle a little bit. That's how you can be more specific. But it's the same basic stretch. It's like, would you lie down here, birthday girl? Face up. I'm really getting a lot of mileage on them. You know, this is just an example. As we change the position of the arms for the different meridians in the leg, you know, it's the same thing. When we get to that, I'll just show you not what I'm remembering. It's not going to work. So it's like with adductors, like when you're trying to stretch the adductors, you know. Just relax now. Like, you know, we do a common figure 4 for the adductors, but positioning of the leg it is different. You can stretch individual meridians or individual adductors by just a simple position of the leg. So, using the knee, you can put the leg below it, and when you stretch, this is for the spleen. And when you move it up a little higher, it's for the liver. And the highest one is for the kidney. So you remember that you can angle the appendages just slightly and be very specific to either the muscle you're stretching or the meridian. That's why I called attention to the arm position. That's different between a lung, pericardium, and heart. So when you're doing the heart stretch, do the arm until they feel it more where it starts. Okay?
Is it above or below the biceps? I can't remember. But it's the little muscle that is between
The coracobrachialis.
this mountain,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to come right below it.
just below it. Okay.
Because when you come below the coracoid here's the coracoid brachialis, here's the bicep, here's the coracoid brachialis, and then if you come right in between below that and the tricep, that's where the heart meridian is.
Oh, okay.
Always in that groove, you know. If you hold the analogy that the energy runs through your body like water, and the water seeks those deepest areas, that's where the chi is.
She's groovy.
Groovy, baby. Okay, so that's heart. Now, if you look at your chart and you look at the small intestine meridian, the stretch will be a lot like the large intestine. But the small intestine, where the large intestine started on the big finger, the larger finger, the small intestine starts on the small finger, or as we call it up north, pinky finger. Oh, that's the pinky finger. So it starts on the lower nail and it comes down on the side of the hand. So if you just put your finger up on the hand and run it down the side of the hand, you're going to fall into a little groove on the side of the hand, which is right above this here bone.
Hair bone? This hair bone?
This here bone. That's right, bro. That's why I said this here bone. So, but it's an easy way to find it. So just a little pressure so you can feel the underlying structure, and then sure enough, right into that little divot. And that's where the source point is for a small intestine. Now just press in there a little bit and tell me if you don't feel it. And if you don't, you want to laterally deviate right into it and you'll feel it. Okay? Hand pain, wrist pain. But also, it's the balancing point for the small intestine. And the small intestine is another filter for the heart. So it helps separate the pure from the impure. So it only tries to give the best to the heart. Okay, so it's a filter. Curiously enough, it dissipates with excessive alcohol the effectiveness of the small intestine. And when I heard that, it reminded me about when you're at a bar early in the morning and you're drinking.
Early in the
And
morning.
if you had enough, your heart starts to look at the person next to you. What's going on? Because there ain't a good filter right there no more. They're just like, come on. You know, and that's how, you know, like they say, you drink enough, you start making some bad decisions for yourself. Because the small intestine is depreciated enough, so, you know, that's what happens.
So then we should just push on this point.
Or I think you just push that person away and go watch your business. That's what you should do.
Grab him by the wrist and be like, you're coming with me.
Or push that last round away. Be pushing this way or that way, not at yourself. But but this is balancing for small intestine. Now also too, remember when I said that a large intestine comes up here and it's right in this little groove. If you feel the radius, and you come just on the inside of it, you'll feel that little groove. That's where the large intestine is. Same as the small intestine. It comes here, still on the back of the hand, but again, now you're feeling the ulna. And if you come just on the inside of the ulna, you'll feel that other little groove. And that's where the small intestine is. And the more specific you can be to the location of the meridian, the more specific the channel is going to open up, right? And so then there's a clear pathway between the outside and the inside so that you can more readily ascertain what's going on inside of you. You know, that's the whole premise of this work, is to try to keep your channels open so that you can really hear what's going on and not get fooled or fool yourself, you know. So same with yoga, right? All the 8 limbs of yoga are just to get you to be able to meditate. That's all, that's what it is. Not all, but that's what it is, the 8 limbs of yoga. Because the ultimate thing is for meditation and self-reflection so that you can make good decisions, conscious choice, right? That's what this is all about. So the more specific you can be to opening up those channels, the clearer you'll be able to hear your own higher self and make the appropriate decision. Decisions, expression of emotions, being able to ask for what you need, or all those things that we hold so near and dear to us. This is a way of facilitating some clarity in our life. So small intestine, up, 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 straight line. And where the large intestine went between the anterior and medial deltoid, small intestine comes between the medial and posterior deltoid, right in that groove. These points here, these points here are for a shoulder pain. Frozen shoulder, did you ever hear that term?
Yeah. He does that again.
They use these points, the large intestine point and the small intestine point, on either side of the medial head of the deltoid, right underneath the acromion shelf. That's where the points are located. This is very, very good for frozen shoulder, along with a couple of other points on the back. Small intestine then comes up, and look on your chart. Where does it go from here?
Zigzag. Zigzags down.
Well, you got to give me a little bit more definition than zigzag.
Down to the front of the deltoid, or attached.
Small intestine.
No, wait, am I
on the
looking at
back.
the wrong
This
thing?
is the
Take a
back.
Oh, that's the back
Oh, we can
side.
figure it out.
Never mind.
Okay. So looky here. So
Prince.
yeah. So it comes. Small intestine comes up, and then you see how the zigzag in here? It comes over and then comes to the side, and then up here, and it comes right underneath the zygomatic arch. So it comes from here up underneath the zygomatic arch, in line with the outer canthus of the eye. So if you press up in there, you'll feel a little dull, eh?
When you say outer canthus, you mean the edge of the
The edge of the eye, where the eye comes together, that's the outer canthus. And if you follow that down underneath the zygomatic arch, the cheekbone, that's where the small intestine is. And then you see that from there,
Small intestine.
it goes back to in front of the tragus. So there's some cool words right there. It goes underneath the zygomatic arch, in line with the outer canthus of the eye. I'm pressure friends with hands down. And then it goes right to the front of the tragus, which is the flap in the front of the ear, and it ends in that little hollow. So if you open your mouth and press in there, you'll go into a little deeper. Right? So small intestine point is also used for, is it tinnitus? The ringing in the ear? That's very good. It also can be used for some TMJ work. You know, because the tendon of the temporal muscle comes right in front here. So this affects the TMJ. So we're going to follow it on this. Okay, so that's the source point for small intestine, and this is the small source point for the heart. Okay? Heart and small intestine. So let's, again, and I want you to vary the stretch where they feel it more. So position the arm so they feel it in here more. As up here, you're going to feel it here. The more you drop it down, the more you're going to feel it here. And they need to feel that. And then when you bring the arm over, one is more specific to large intestine, and then if you drop it, maybe you'll feel it more in the back here. This is where you want to feel it. That's for small intestine. So it's the same basic stretches like for a lung and large intestine, but the variation of angle for the arm. But I want you to do those stretches, do the meridians, do the source points. Now, what is the emotion for heart and small intestine?
Joy and shock.
What'd you say?
Joy and shock.
Joy. So joy, you know, love is an offshoot of that. You know, it's actually in reading a lot of the classic text, it's more of a sense of contentment. Joy is almost considered over much, okay? But like, if you feel, you know, when you're really content, you know, and it could be just sitting there doing nothing, you know, that's more when the heart is just in a really good place. Everything's humming, you know, and it doesn't have necessarily, you know, there can be chaos around, but if you feel that contentment in there, that's when you know that your heart is balanced. You know, so if you look at, and I want you to keep on bringing reference to this chart here underneath the conception governing vessel. I want you to look at that chart. You don't have to?
Yeah.
You give me yours. And you'll see, like if you look up heart and small intestine, which is a fire element, okay, it's open to the tongue, meaning that every meridian is connected to an organ, but also the sense. So here's something that you can recognize in someone if there's a heart imbalance that they talk about. Now, I don't wish this on y'all, but if you've ever had any disruption in your heart, some heartache, something like that, you end up talking about it a lot. You know, you could even stop strangers on the street probably and tell them your story, because you need, that's a part of the process of your heart. You know, it's like you got to keep on talking about it, talking about it, talking about it until, that's one of the ways that the body processes that particular emotion. So its emotion, its balanced emotion is joy or compassion or contentment. But then if someone is overjoyed, like if they're just too damn happy all the time. Almost bordering on manic, basically. That's what extreme thing of the heart is, like some sort of manic thing where there's you know, it's like Jesus. You know? Because that is something that's out of balance. I mean, that's an extreme emotion, and that's very, very bad in a long term for the heart. You remember that first page that we read, it's about the prolonged exercise of extreme emotion is what really affects the organ. Right? It's not just, you know, you might just have a big burst, like, awesome, great. But if that continues and continues, that's what wears on your gears and really affects your organ quite a bit. And because it's, you know, the heart, it's more affecting the blood vessels. So, all right, let's do those things. And let's just start working, and then I'm going to go around and show you